Poenari, 1457, a remote fortress in the mountains of Wallachia. 200 noblewomen sit beside their husbands, draped in silk, sipping wine, celebrating Easter. By dawn, their husbands will be dead, skewered in the courtyard. And these women, daughters of aristocrats, who had never lifted a finger in labor, will begin a brutal death march into the peaks. One was named Voika, 23 years old, married just 2 years. Her hands had never grasped anything heavier than a goblet. Within days, those hands would be shredded flesh, nails ripped away, bones showing through skin as she hauled stones up a sheer cliff to rebuild a castle for the man who slaughtered her husband. She labored until her silk rotted off her body, until she had nothing left to shield her, until her blood mixed with the rocks she carried. Voika was one of 200. Most perished on that mountain. And this was only the start. What Vlad Dracula did to women wasn't war's unfortunate byproduct. It was deliberate strategy. It was the message. It was the core of his terror. He impaled mothers beside their daughters. He flayed wives for a poorly stitched shirt. He transformed female bodies into public warnings so grotesque that the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, the conqueror of Constantinople, saw them and turned his army back. Hollywood sold you a vampire who charms women in moonlit castles. History delivered a tyrant who annihilated them in broad daylight. This is what truly occurred, not to Vlad, but to them. To the women history tried to erase. History immortalizes the monster. It silences the victims. That's what we're here to change. This is Crown and Dagger. If you want to support the channel, drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Now, let me reveal where this darkness originated, and why Vlad believed breaking women was the path to unbreakable power. But where did it begin? Why target women? Vlad spent 6 years as a child hostage in the Ottoman Empire. He observed. He absorbed. Terror was a weapon. Bodies were propaganda. And the quickest way to shatter a society was to shatter its women. When he returned to Wallachia, his father was dead. His older brother had been tortured and buried alive, betrayed by the nobles they trusted. The boy who left was erased. What returned was something colder, a man convinced that dominating women meant dominating everything, and that punishing women sent signals no one could ignore. So that's precisely what he unleashed. It started with the wives of those who had betrayed his family. Easter Sunday, 1457. The noble families of Wallachia gather at Vlad's palace for a feast. Boyars in their richest robes, their wives sparkling with jewels. Laughter fills the halls. They believe it's a reconciliation. They're mistaken. During the banquet, Vlad rises and poses one question. How many princes have you known in your lifetime? Uneasy chuckles. Even the youngest noble has seen 7 rulers rise and fall. The eldest has witnessed 30. Each one betrayed, murdered, replaced by another puppet. Vlad nods slowly. That is the disease. The doors bolt shut. Guards flood in. Within minutes, the elder boyars are hauled outside and impaled in the courtyard. Screams reverberate through the stone. Voika hears her father-in-law plead for mercy. Then silence. But for the younger nobles and their families, Vlad has other designs. Still in their Easter finery, the wives and daughters are chained together. Voika feels iron bite into her wrists until it draws blood. A guard shoves her forward. She stumbles. The woman beside her pulls her up. Before the march begins, Vlad forces them to witness. Their husbands hoisted on stakes in the courtyard. Some die fast. Some linger. Voika spots her husband among the forest of bodies. He's still breathing, still whispering her name. She cannot reach him. She cannot look away. Then the march starts. 50 miles north. Through forests, mud, rain. No food. No rest. Women who once rode in carriages now stagger barefoot over jagged stones. Some collapse on day 1. Guards drag them. When dragging slows them, they're abandoned. Wolves finish the rest. When they reach the ruins of Poenari Castle, Vlad waits. "You will rebuild this stronghold with your own hands." According to chronicles, they toiled for months. Silk gowns tore first, soaked in blood, rotted by rain. Then undergarments. Soon they were naked, 200 noble women exposed to sun and frost, carrying boulders up a mountain with bare, bleeding hands. Fingers split open by day 3. By week 2, feeling vanished. The countess beside Vojka slipped from the cliff on day 12. Her body rolled down the rocks. No one could pause. No one could mourn. At night, they huddled on bare stone. No blankets, no shelter, clinging together for warmth like beasts. Mountain cold sliced through their ruined bodies. Some never woke. Corpses were dragged aside. The work pressed on. They ate whatever guards tossed them. Scraps, bones with scraps of meat. Water from puddles. Women who once had servants pour their wine now fought over muddy runoff. Many perished from exhaustion. Others tumbled from cliffs. Some sat on the stones and refused to move until beaten to death. A few attempted escape. They were recaptured within hours and impaled before the rest. A reminder that death was not a mercy Vlad granted lightly. And Vlad observed from above. When the castle was complete, only a handful survived. They were kept as servants in the fortress their broken hands had raised, their noble names erased, their families obliterated. They spent their remaining days climbing the same stairs that had destroyed them. But here's what makes it more chilling. Poetry wasn't mere revenge. It was theater. Vlad wanted every noble house in Wallachia to know what happened to the women of his foes. He wanted wives to gaze at their husbands and wonder, if he falls from favor, will I be next? The women of Poenari weren't just casualties. They were a proclamation. And the proclamation was heard. But Vlad wasn't done with the women of his own realm. Building a castle was punishment for traitors' wives. For common women, the terror was even more intimate. If you were a woman in Wallachia between 1456 and 1462, you lived in perpetual dread, not of war or plague, but of being noticed. Vlad saw women as society's foundation. A wife who failed her husband cracked that foundation. Cracks demanded blood to seal them. One tale from contemporary German pamphlets. A peasant walks through a village in a shirt too short, legs exposed. In Vlad's Wallachia, this isn't mere shame. It's proof of neglect. Vlad stops him. "Do you have a wife?" The man nods. "Bring her." She arrives. Alina, strong hands, a lifetime of toil, cooking, cleaning, child-rearing, sewing when time allowed. Vlad studies her like livestock. "Why does your husband wander like a beggar? Is there no flax in your home? Are your hands useless?" She tries to explain. Children to tend, fields to work, never enough hours. Vlad's verdict is instant. What followed lasted hours. The village was compelled to watch. When it ended, what remained of her was raised on a stake in the square. Her body lingered for days, a warning no one could miss. Then Vlad found the widowed peasant another wife. He looked at her and spoke clearly so all could hear. "Make sure his shirt is longer, or you'll join her." This was law in Vlad's Wallachia, not inked on paper, carved on flesh. Adulterous wives were flayed before their families. Husbands forced to witness. Widows who remarried too swiftly were impaled, bodies left at crossroads. Women who fell short of his standards met punishments the chronicles dare not fully describe. One account tells of a woman accused of infidelity. Vlad ordered her to the square. What they inflicted took hours. The crowd watched. When finished, what remained was staked as a lesson. The message was total. Your body belongs to your husband, your family, your prince. Fail any, and the price is unimaginable. Women ceased venturing out unless essential. Wives inspected husbands' clothing obsessively, fearing a loose thread or short hem. Mothers taught daughters that survival meant one thing: remain unseen. This wasn't the rule of a vampire. It was the reign of a man who grasped that the swiftest way to control a people was to terrorize its women. Was Vlad merely a child of a savage era, or something darker? Share your thoughts below. But first, see what he unleashed on the women of his enemies. Winter 1462. Vlad has crushed the boyars. His people are paralyzed with fear. Now he turns south toward the Ottoman Empire. This isn't conquest. Vlad lacks the army. It's a campaign of messages, inscribed on innocent bodies. He crosses the Danube, sweeping village by village. What he leaves is silence. In a letter to Hungary's King Matthias dated February 11, 1462, Vlad tallies with chilling precision 23,884 Turks and Bulgarians slain, not counting those burned alive or beheaded. Entire families wiped out. No one spared. But slaughter was only the prelude. Survivors were gathered for something worse. Imagine a Bulgarian village on the Danube. The assault ends. Men who fought are dead. Survivors, mostly women and children, are driven into the square. They brace for slavery. Slavery would be kindness. Instead, stakes rise. A mother clutches her daughter. Soldiers seize them, but they don't separate them. That would be mercy. Vlad wants families to perish together. He wants mothers to witness, daughters to hear. The stake is blunt, oiled, crafted not for quick death, but slow agony as the body's weight forces it deeper over hours, sometimes days. The mother watches her daughter hoisted skyward. She hears sounds that will haunt her until her own end, minutes later, on the stake beside her. When Ottoman scouts arrived days later, they found what one chronicler called a forest of the impaled. Bodies sorted by height. Tallest stakes for the most prominent. Families grouped together. That was the intent. Some still twitched alive. And this was one village. Vlad repeated it along the entire Danube. Dozens of villages. Thousands of bodies. The river ran red for miles. By June 1462, Sultan Mehmed II had seen enough. He assembled the era's largest army, over 100,000, and marched to crush Vlad. But Vlad had prepared his entire life for this. Outside Targovist, the Ottoman advance halted. Frontline soldiers screamed. Some fled. Others dropped to their knees. The Sultan rode forward. Before him stretched a field nearly a mile long, half a mile wide. On stakes of varying heights, 20,000 bodies, entire families together. The Byzantine historian Leonikos Chalkikondyles was present. He wrote of large stakes holding about 20,000 men, women, and children. Quite a sight for the Turks and the Sultan himself. Imagine being one of those women, still alive, body slowly yielding to gravity, watching the world's mightiest army arrive, and knowing even they cannot save you. That your death is not tragedy, but text to be read. Some corpses had rotted for weeks. Others bled fresh. A few still moved in the summer heat. The stench hit the Ottomans before the sight. Soldiers who had sacked cities vomited. Mehmed, the conqueror of Constantinople, breaker of empires, stared at the field and withdrew. According to Chalkikondyles, he declared it impossible to deprive such a man of his country, one who ruled his subjects so ruthlessly. It wasn't praise. It was retreat in diplomatic clothing. Vlad had prevailed. The cost, the bodies of mothers and daughters. The Sultan retreated. The women remained on their stakes. Vlad had triumphed. But one final woman haunts this tale, the closest to him, and her fate was the bleakest. She has no recorded name in history. We know her only as Vlad's first wife. Spring 1462. The Ottomans withdraw. But Vlad's brother Radu advances with a new army toward Poenari Castle, the same fortress built by noblewomen's bleeding hands 5 years earlier. Vlad's wife stands on the battlements. Below, the Argesh River rages against rocks. Behind her, the castle erected on women suffering. Ahead, an army under Ottoman banners. She knows what awaits captured women: harems, slavery, degradation. But she also knows her husband's world. She has seen the stakes, heard the screams, walked halls built by the dying. She is trapped between horrors. According to local legend, she turned to her servants and spoke 7 words. "I would rather be food for the fish of the Argesh than a prisoner of the Turks." Then she leapt. Her body plunged hundreds of feet into the river. The water claimed her without trace. Today, that stretch is still called Raul Doamnei, the Lady's River. Vlad fled through a hidden passage. He endured years in Hungarian captivity, remarried, and died in battle in 1476. His head was sent to Constantinople, staked by the Sultan. The man who lived by stakes died by one. But his wife had already chosen her escape. Voika hauling stones until her hands were bone. Alina destroyed over a too short shirt. Thousands of nameless mothers impaled beside daughters. A nameless wife choosing river over twin hells. These are Vlad Dracula's women. Not seduced, not romanticized, destroyed. Hollywood craved a monster who was alluring. A villain you could quietly admire. A darkness that thrilled rather than repulsed. So they gave him capes, castles, immortality. The real Dracula offered none. He offered stakes, screams, and women as parchment for messages in blood. And here's the grim truth history conceals. It succeeded. For 6 years, a kingdom smaller than many modern cities defied the greatest empire on earth. Not through negotiation or tactics, through cruelty so extreme, so staged, so focused on women and families that even the Sultan recoiled. Vlad demonstrated something sinister about power, that horror at its peak becomes its own force, that the quickest path to breaking enemies is breaking the women they cherish. The question isn't whether Vlad was evil. History teems with greater killers. The question is why we reshaped him into a romantic icon, why we gave him fangs and candles, why we made him seductive instead of horrifying, and why we forgot the women he crushed. Because that's our habit. We enshrine monsters. We craft legends around them. We sell books, films, merchandise with their image. Victims become numbers, background, nameless shapes in someone else's tale. Voika deserves remembrance. Her hands bled so a tyrant could have a fortress. Her agony built walls tourists now photograph. So does Alina, killed over a shirt. So do the Danube's mothers, holding daughters as stakes rose. So does the nameless wife who chose river over a world without choices. They didn't volunteer for this story. They didn't elect to become warnings, examples, but they did. The least we owe is to remember them. If you reached this far, hit subscribe. Today, tourists climb the 1,480 steps to Poenari Castle. They snap selfies at the summit. They buy Dracula shirts in gift shops. They post about vampires in Transylvania. They don't realize they stand on a mass grave. The stones beneath their feet were carried by Voika, by women whose silk decayed as they labored, by mothers who watched daughters fall from cliffs and couldn't stop. Every step up that mountain treads on suffering. Every photo rests on a grave. Every smile stands where women screamed until silence. Hollywood gave you fangs and romance. History gave you stakes and erasure. Now you know the difference. But Vlad wasn't alone in wielding cruelty against women as power. Centuries earlier, an empire perfected this nightmare, making Vlad seem almost restrained. What the Mongols did to Baghdad's royal family became a warning to the world.